Scott Bintz is on a mission to make people's lives better. A good kind of crazy. A serial e-commerce and business entrepreneur that has spent his life discovering principles to make his life and the lives of people around him better. Scott Bintz founded RealTruck.com in the basement of a duplex in 1998. That grew to a $100+ million e-commerce superstore from North Dakota. Recognized as a top place to work by North Dakota Young People's and Prairie Business Magazine and other recognitions like BizRate Platinum Circle of Excellence, Internet Retailer's Top 300 Mobile, and Top 500 e-commerce companies. Currently involved in a number of business ventures, from advising brands and e-commerce strategy consulting to board member duties and limited speaking engagement. Scott is an experienced expert in e-commerce, business strategy, digital marketing, and company work culture building. He also created RH Rebel, a property development company, and RH Rebel Storage, a state-of-the-art self-storage facility. In the e-commerce sector, he continues his involvement in Red-Headed Rebel, a marketing company that advises companies with e-commerce, RHRSwag.com, a race parts website, and Red-Headed Rebel Brew, which is RHRBrew.com, coffee for entrepreneurs, game changers, rebels, and rule breakers. He has taught a senior level digital marketing at the University of Jamestown, has been featured in a national UPS ads, and is now a rookie author. And his book is up here to purchase if you would like to as well. His favorite saying is, anything's possible. Scott grew up in Minot, North Dakota, and graduated from Minot State University in 1993 with his bachelor's in economics. He currently lives with his family in Jamestown, North Dakota. And with that, I give you Scott Bintz.
Thank you, Melody. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Let me
Tweak it. So your first slide or
Yeah.
last slide?
First slide.
Okay.
So, do I just hit the button?
This one just scroll one forward.
That way or this way?
That way.
All right. Okay. Okay. So, like all things in entrepreneurship, you sometimes have to wing it, and nice to come down here. So, anyway, entrepreneurship. You know, oftentimes people think of entrepreneurship as you have this well-designed strategic plan, and you go this, and then you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and then you get the pot of gold or pot of blessings or whatever. But the reality of it is entrepreneurship is really like pinball, where you just work the flippers and you get to know the game, and sometimes you do well and sometimes you don't do well, and you got to adjust your game. And once you have it mastered, then people come and say, boy, you're really a natural at pinball. And then the next thing you know, you come into the game and the whole game's redesigned. They've changed things, and so you've got to relearn it and go to survive, which involves change. So, oops, here we go. So who I am, obviously is introduced by Melody already, but the most noteworthy thing that I was involved in was I created a company called RealTruck.com in my basement that grew to over 100 million in e-commerce sales. And what is interesting about that is, number one, I didn't do it by myself. A lot of times I get a lot of juice for it, but I had a really good team around me of people that made it possible. And how we did that, how do you do that from North Dakota with no Ivy Leaguers and no resources, right? And so, and of course, here's how you can contact me, which feel free to do before or after. That's a magazine article I was in where they described me as a culture king. I would not describe myself as a culture king, but at the same token, that's how you can contact me. My company now is called Red-Headed Rebel, which is a nickname I picked up. But what most people want to hear is the Real Truck story. So the Real Truck story is this aspect of I started the company initially thinking there had to be an easy way to sell these pickup covers. I had a manufacturer's rep firm with some people that worked for me, and the traditional theory at that time was you had to show people the product to sell it. And so you would go to town and call on dealers, and you'd go to trade shows, and there has to be an easier way to do this than going to endless series of trade shows. So we made a video, and I bought something from Staples.com online for the office, and I thought, that's cool. Got some paper, and I didn't have to go get it at Staples. So I thought, maybe we can do this online. So I went to one of the manufacturers, and I said, hey, you should do this online. And they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to put their products online for people to sell because it would hurt their dealer base, they felt. And so I said, well, do you mind if I do it? And they said, no, they don't mind. And so that's how Real Truck was born. And my initial plan, this is with the flippers and the game, my initial plan was we were going to set up this site, and I had 500 truck accessory stores that my manufacturer's rep firms set up sold products for, and I was going to convince them to sell truck accessories online, which I was terribly unsuccessful at. None of them wanted to do it. They were more concerned with their right now business. I would even clone the Real Truck website for them for free. But we put this website up, and on day one, it sold a pickup cover to a gentleman in Tennessee, and of course it wasn't as automated. But eventually, because of my experience with manufacturers, and again, one of the reasons I really like Million Cups is the networking opportunity, which I might talk about perhaps in the Q&A on what is impactful about people coming together. But, so, I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, so we started in the basement, and the initial idea was to get other people to sell online that were already, they had the product, they had the money, they had the resources, they had everything they needed to be successful online, except they were more concerned with their right now business. So Real Truck was born. And so how and why? How do you go from a basement to over 100 million in sales and never actually touch a product? Well, there's a number of things involved. When we were about 8 million and we'd won some awards and it was really cool, I got to this place personally that I felt like we're in the endless pursuit of more. More sales, more this, more employees, more. Why are we doing this? And that's when I picked up the habit of dirt track racing, which someone mentioned earlier. And so I've been doing that for about 10 years. I'm retiring now from it. But at that point I knew that people oftentimes had great personal values, but had a hard time bringing them to work for fear of losing their job, etc., etc. And so we kind of reinvented ourselves. I went on this book reading binge, and I read books like Good to Great and Tribal Leadership, and Chip Conley's Where Great Companies Get Their Mojo. And we kind of reinvented ourselves to get on a mission to make people's lives and vehicles better. And along the way, there's a lot of, obviously in 6 minutes, difficult to share the whole story, but we had to start looking at ourselves not as a pickup accessory store that sold online. We had to look at ourselves as an e-commerce company that happened to sell truck accessories. And we got on this mission to make people's lives and vehicles better, and I asked the whole company what their personal values were, and I bucketed them. And we started rolling them out to the company one at a time. And one of them was deliver more, transparency rocks, which are there. Improve, take risks, include fun, and be humble. And the deliver more was this ideal that we wanted to deliver more to our customers, partners, and employees in ever-increasing ways. Ultimately, we wanted to kill status quo, right? And it's really the kryptonite. Now, as a company, this wasn't an easy process. Our first attempt failed, meaning like our first attempt I wrote a mission, picked some guiding principles or core values I liked, threw them on the wall. A year later, nobody embraced them. It was like, what? And then so on the second attempt, we were more calculated about it, being a little bit of a marketer. We like I said, I asked the company what their values, what they tried to live by, and that's how we got them. And ultimately, so and part of that process was, if you can see some of the slides, was be better at a few things, be really good at a few things, rather than trying to be good at all things. And so we started kind of focusing on that. But ultimately, to get to where we got, we started to ask questions. So we had this, one of our guiding principles was deliver more. So the questions were, what are we doing that's not even status quo with our customers? Let's ask everybody in the company these questions. And we started looking at the answers. What can we do to deliver more to our customers? What can we do to deliver more to our employees? What can we do to deliver more to our business partners? And we started to get these answers of where we were falling short and some things that we could do to enhance it. And we would kind of focus on this one at a time. And we had, at that time, I created this big, hairy, audacious goal of having 25 million in sales, which was like 10 years out on the old strategic plan. And once we started getting the culture rocking, and you empowered all these people to deliver more and to be transparent and to improve, where we would reward people for practicing these, we would catch people practicing these principles and shout them out for it. The management meetings I asked the managers to, or the leaders, managers, whatever you want to call them, to shout out one person in their own department and one person in another department that was practicing one of these principles, and that's kind of how it started getting into the culture. And so, and we kept asking those questions with each of the guiding principles. Oftentimes companies have principles or core values on the wall, and they have missions, but they don't base their decisions off of them. And the whole purpose of the quote guiding principles is to guide our decision. Is it delivering more? Is it transparent? Like one of the things we had on our website was, North Dakota company, conservative North Dakota in a Facebook world, right? So transparency is important. It's about trust and that kind of thing. And so both ways, we needed to have trust with our customers, with our partners, and with employees. And so how do you get there, right? And so we try to be, we would ask questions, are we being transparent? Obviously with HR stuff, there's a few things, you can't say, well, we fired Brett because of this reason, or whatever, but so there's certain things you can't be transparent about as a company because of privacy. However, a lot of the things that you can. So like an example of that was, at one time, one of the web developers did some code, and it sorted products by what RealTruck made the most money on. And it was listed under best sellers. So asking the question, is this transparent? It's like, well, no, it's not really transparent, because we either have to, one, change the title of the sort to sort by what RealTruck makes the most money on, or we need to sort it by best sellers based on quantity, time, dollar volume, something more accurate. And of course the employee was trying to help RealTruck, right? But the reality of it was, it wasn't a transparent practice, even though it was good. Maybe it looked like it was good for the bottom line, but I don't think long term. Anyway, some of our things that happened, obviously some of our marketing developed. We don't care if you've been naughty or nice. We sell bacon and truck accessories. We're all out of bacon. We did a lot of things to create memorable experiences for employees, partners, customers, and even, and of course, customers reciprocated. I was featured in national UPS ads, and of course, what went around the office was the picture you see on the screen with Eric doing a photobomb of me. But we would do all sorts of things to also have a good relationship with our partners, rather than being an adversarial relationship with business partners. I wrote a book about it, Principles of Fortune. If I was to retitle it, I would call it Principles of Blessings, because it's not really a get-rich book. It's more about how do you really get people all moving in the right direction for a greater good. Oops, I really got things messed up here. Anyway, and there's 12 takeaways from the book, but I ran out of time. For the Q&A, sometimes to prompt people, but one of the things I would say is, if you do have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but what's your number one question around e-commerce, work culture, entrepreneurship, writing a book? And lastly, I'll say, here's how you can contact me. Feel free to reach out. Briefly, I'm going to share about connecting people. It's not by happen chance that vehicles all came out of Detroit at one time. Tech comes out of Silicon Valley. tarps come out of the Dakotas, like farm tarps and pickup covers, soft roll-up pickup covers come out of the Dakotas. And of course, what you see in North Dakota is because you have aviation in Grand Forks and you have tech because of Great Plains in Fargo, and you have ag, you see a lot of ag tech. Now you see drones coming out of Fargo and that whole area where you get people together and exponentially in things like this, Million Cups, and you wind up exponentially improving things. When I toured Google one time, when they didn't let anybody on their campus that wasn't part of Google because they didn't want their secrets getting out, and I thought, it's not goofballs like me that are walking around Google taking ideas, it's all the people commuting back to San Fran from Apple and Google and Hewlett-Packard, and them talking on the trains is what's exponentially increasing some of the things that are happening in the community. So I love it when people get together like this. Anyway, thank you for your time and for having me.
Cecil O'Brien with Farm Bureau. How fast did you have to grow, or did you transition from the non-e-commerce to the e-commerce world when you started up?
We started initially e-commerce all the way, meaning in the aspect of it was just a website in my basement. And at that time, the hardest thing was to get a credit card processor because you couldn't get set up with a credit card. You have no brick and mortar. You have no. It was the old ones that used the keypad ones you'd see at Mini Mart. So in order to come in, print it off, purge it, and then type the however many deals. So we started, kind of e-commerce right up front, and then we did evolve to having like a mail order catalog to make us appear like we weren't just in this computer, on the online totally. And then at that time it was difficult to convince partners to sell to because they were traditionally wanting to support brick and mortar stores and didn't think you could sell something for $500 online.
I have a question. I'm Leah with Bernie Business Group. I think as entrepreneurs, it's important for us to all establish what we will not do, because like you said, focus on what you're good at. So along the way, what things did you determine that you maybe could have done that you chose not to?
Well, I think there was one of the things when we started rolling out the guiding principles and we started asking a lot of questions was we created stop doing lists. Same thing. What are the things, right? Everybody, write some things, a few things you think we should stop doing. And one of the things was, at that time, we did about $500,000 in business in Canada, and we stopped selling to Canada. Not that we didn't love Canadians, but we didn't do it well. At that time, you had different GST and PST, and some of the products you could ship there, and some of them that you couldn't, and so we stopped doing that. On the data, our name was Real Truck, and so at one time, 40% of our data was for car parts that accounted for 2% of our business. So that means 40% of the labor and time to put products online was accounting for 2% of our business, and so we just realized, like, let's just accept the fact we're probably going to do, let's be really good, let's be an expert at pickup accessories. And what it did was when we dropped these 40% of our data, we actually gained because people who had pickups could find their products faster. And so those are a couple of examples of things we stopped doing.
Monique with SDSU. What is your biggest challenge or change that you made to your culture that really put it above the rest?
I think the biggest thing was one of our guiding principles was be humble. So we shouldn't praise ourselves, we should let our customers, partners, and employees do it. And that we should pay it forward, leave it better than we found it, and we should praise others when they do something well and accept the responsibility when things go sideways. Well, one of the things that we did that really got things rocking was I talked about having the team, my team, the management team, shout out each other. I would do a video each week. We had multiple offices, so I would do a video each week of these shout outs of, hey, this happened, this happened, this happened. I'd like to shout out Fred for delivering more because he was on the phone with a customer for an hour and a half, or whatever that happened to be. And then we created swag items that bling. There was a video on one of the shows about it, but flair. We created flair items, that little buttons that had the guiding principles that people could give to someone when they caught someone practicing a guiding principle. And so the biggest game changer was when everybody within the company started shouting people out for practicing the guiding principles. And we did tie it in with our reviews. We tied it, we tied it in with all our hiring practices, where we would do interviews with people, and we would hire for culture fit first, skill set second. And the reason is because if you do skill first, sometimes if you have someone highly skilled, but they don't really fit the culture. And in Real Truck, like if you were, say, an accountant, and you weren't cool with someone wearing clown shoes to the office, it probably wouldn't be a good place for you to work, right? And so it was important that we get people that either had or aspired to live by the principles that we wanted to be part of our business. But the real game changer was getting an entire company of key people catching each other practicing the guiding principles. And it was phenomenal to watch. And so it wasn't all on me to catch people doing things right. Everybody was doing it. And I think it's something you have to work at. With culture, a lot of times people will, when I initially got on fire on the book Good to Great, which has got a lot of good things in it, and I would talk to people, yeah, I read that book, I took it to work, and nobody bought into it, and so, but it's like it's got to be nurtured. And obviously, when I was leading the company, it was easier to do when you have the leader on board. But in any case, you have to nurture it, or it will, like all things, its flame will die. And then you have to also look at it a work in progress rather than perfection. Meaning, Real Truck at that time wasn't perfect, but we kind of, again, we had a guiding principle of improve, which also meant learning. It meant that just because we did it this way yesterday doesn't mean we're going to do it this way today, and to ask why we're doing things. Part of the stop doing list, we were stamping all these invoices. One day I came in and one of the people was stamping these invoices. When you're a dropship company, say you have 500,000 invoices you process a year, maybe even more, and they're stamping the date you received them. It's like, why are we doing that? Well, that way we know when we got them. And then it's like, so for an early pay discount, if we don't get it, we'll have proof when we got it. It's like, well, how many times have we taken an early pay discount and not got it? Well, let me find out. Well, never. We never had an issue. And if we did have an issue, they would have had to trust the date we stamped on. And so this is that's an example of like always be asking, why are we doing what we're doing? Because the reason behind it might have changed. And that was an example of where we probably had 2 full-time jobs of people stamping dates. We've received invoices for something that never had happened, and if it did happen, the logic for balancing it, or the logic behind it wouldn't work anyway if they didn't trust you in the first place. So,
Scott, I have a question for you. Melanie Torno with Torno Mediation Mental Health Services. What inspired you to write your book? And can you talk to us a little bit about the process of how you founded the idea of the book and the process of walking through it till it was published?
I thought about, like a lot of things, I thought about doing it, and inspiration, when you're inspired, I think it's important one takes action. So I thought about it, and then I mentioned it to a friend, and he said, "You're not a writer," and I thought, yeah, he's right. And so that cooled it for like a year. And then I had some other people say, "Hey, you should write a book." And I yeah, maybe I can do it. And then I got to thinking, it can't be that hard because too many people have done it. it might be an embarrassing process, but maybe, and so, and I kind of wanted to share the Real Truck story because, for the people of Real Truck, because I think we really, you know, we kind of became an icon a little bit on how companies should treat employees, customers, and partners. And so I sat down one weekend and I started writing, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and I was trying to write for perfection. And after the first weekend, and I started, you know, the reason I think it's important to take action is that it will keep you going. If you already have if you've already worked the dirt a little bit, when you get discouraged, the fact that you've started the process will help you pick it up again when the inspiration comes back. So then I was like, boy, this is going to be really hard, but I was trying to write it like a college paper, like perfection, where I'd never go back and edit it. And I said, no, I'm just going to puke on I'm going to just type, and I'm going to just type and type. And so I did 3 more power weekends like that, had about 100,000 words, which 100,000 words is 60,000 words does a 200-page book. And then some people like Caleb and an editor went through it, and they condensed it to about 60,000 words. There's a few things left out because they fit in with the context of the book, and which I subsequently, I wrote a chapter on the doubtful passenger, which is about overcoming the doubt in our mind. But it didn't fit in with the concept of the book, so I didn't include it. And then it was this, so essentially 4 power weekends to write it, which took like about 3 months. And then the editing process was probably another 3-4 months of going back and forth where you're about dilated, your eyes trying to read the same thing over and over again. And then voila. And then it was done, and then it was the aspect of putting it out there, and then you go, with the book marketing, it's a little bit different. There's 2 things you have to do. Not only have you market the book, so the cover, you got 5 seconds for someone to be convinced to buy it, and then they also have to read it too, right? Because we all got books stacked up that we've got that we haven't read yet. So there's 2 things in the book marketing process, but it's been a unique experience on going through it, and it's been really heartfelt with some of the people that will read the book and get on fire or inspired about whatever it is they're doing. Sometimes it's just it's someone that works at a place or someone, an entrepreneur that might be struggling a little bit, and they'll get re-inspired. So that's kind of cool.
I've got a question. I'll ask it, I'll hand it up. Deanna Beckett, character coach. There we go, I forgot my title. I was born and raised in Valley City, so you're North Dakota. Walked through the book process as well, and I know it was probably mentioned in your introduction. Where is your focus now? Obviously, the book, but then where are your plans to go forward?
Well, right now, I have a company called Redheaded Rebel, which does some e-commerce consulting, kind of around the ideal of helping manufacturers get into an e-commerce sector. Meaning in today's world, I think we have to, your product service, you have to get it to people any way they want it, however they want it, whenever they want it. So I've been doing that, but I'm still kind of trying to figure out what my second act is going to be. I haven't found, we're kind of with Redheaded Rebel, we're trying to be on this mission to make people's lives and businesses better, but we're still kind of in the shotgun stage of that approach of like, well, this, no, over here. And then I'm doing a little bit of teaching again now at the University of Jamestown on digital marketing. And so still kind of figuring out what's next, so to speak. Cool.
Mike gave me sound. Selling truck parts where you never touch the product, you're just selling. How does that process work? How do your people know that this is going to fit or work for the customer, other than you're just reading off the cut sheets and spec sheets?
Well, you have a little bit of data mapping, and so like it was really early on we realized like, so you have this part, say it's a pickup cover, and it fits a whatever you know, 98, I can't remember the data exactly now, but say a 98 to 2007 Chevy 6'6" bed, and you would map the data to it so they could pick their year, make, model, bed size, and then it would display that it would fit. And of course, we looked at it, part of our company was we looked at it like, if we can't make this easy for people to order, like sometimes in the industry, you would have people making jokes at people, they don't even know what kind of truck they got. And we needed to look at it like, no. We need to make this so easy for people to find what they need for their vehicle. And of course, each industry is a little bit different, but ultimately, it was early on we realized you would have people put products online and they would list them individually, and you kind of had to figure out what fits yours. And we remapped the data so you could just enter your year, make, model, bed size, cab style, engine type, whatever was required, and then it would display what fits that product. And again, that was, I think, kind of an internal thing that we, like, internally it was one of the things we needed to be really, really good at, of making it easy to find what fits people's vehicle. The same, and I think that comes from this idea of even our marketing, we try to do it memorable. Meaning, if we knew a product shipped in a day, on the website we would put 2 days. Because if it shipped in a day, they'd think it was supposed to. Meaning if we said a day and it shipped in a day, it's supposed to. If we said 2 days and it shipped in 1 day, it was like, oh, it shipped faster than it said. Some companies we competed with did it the other way around. If a product shipped in 5 days, they put 1 to get the business. And we never did those kind of practices in long term. And then we would do things that would, if you bought $200 worth of stuff, we would just surprise you with fuzzy dice. But then we started to surprise, rather than say, hey, you get some fuzzy dice if you order $200 on the front side, we would do it on the back side after you'd already bought to create the memorable experience. And we would do it with shirts too, which gets into real quickly was, nobody wants a free shirt that doesn't fit them. So we would do a free shirt and then say, hey, pick your size and we'll send you a, you know, looking good to crying, my truck's doing time shirt or something like that. But that's the same thing with the shopping experience, that we needed to make it easy for people to, you know, nobody wants to look at something that does, it's a buzzkill to see something cool and it don't fit your vehicle.
I have a question for you. So, you talk about being humble in your culture, and how have you been able to, with being featured on ads, magazine articles, being called the Culture King, writing a book, seeing your face in, you know, different bookstores, what have you done personally to help keep yourself humble and grounded?
Well, I think I think like part of trying to personally practice humility, one needs to give credit to where one's strength comes from. But the reality of it is, with Real Truck, it's the people of Real Truck that turned Real Truck into what it was. They're also the foundation for what's in the book. And of course, I think some of that is just trying to also help way too, where, you know, sometimes people will call me and I'll chat with them for an hour about something, and just to kind of help their business and trying to, you know, give back, pay it forward. I do a lot of speaking things that are for fun and for free, so to speak, if I can help. And then I think also remember that, you know, I just am an average, everyday, ordinary guy. Or sometimes where my message to people is that you can be an average, everyday person and do some really neat things if you live your life or work your business by principles.
So I have another question, Sean. I assume you're not involved in the day-to-day minutia of the running of the businesses, and I just wondered how hard it was to extricate yourself from that as the CEO.
I think, well, with Real Truck, you know, when I sold Real Truck, at that time, I thought Real Truck needed, you know, smarter leadership than me. Is one of the reasons I had sold Real Truck. And then I think, like all things with the I think you go through a loss when you sell a business, because there's a lot of people I have personal connections with and at the business, and you know, even today I have 2 daughters that still work at Real Truck, but I think you go through the normal grieving process, or I did. I mean, it was weird, like, if you're familiar with the grieving process, but I went through it with Real Truck. I think I'm on the other side of it, of acceptance, in that when things would be done differently than what I would do, initially it was like hard to take, because I looked at it that we really did some cool things the way we were doing it. It's like anyone, you know, someone comes and redecorates your house, it's a little uncomfortable. So, but I think it's kind of been a process, and I was happy to see, you know, like on the culture thing, if you don't nourish it, it dies, and I was happy to see, like at Real Truck, that one of my daughters got a Real Leader Award for some of the stuff that she does with the community and that kind of thing in Fargo, so that was kind of cool to see. And I think with some of the other businesses I do, the hands-off or hands-on, I think it's always kind of a work in progress of how much do you do or not do, you know. And then, you know, trying to get back to asking questions, because oftentimes it's as simple as, hey, what can I do to be a better boss? What do you need that you don't have? That kind of thing.
Can I add to that? Working for Scott now for about, I'm Caleb, I work for Scott. Tangenting off that, usually what Scott does is he comes into the office and he says, I need help getting this done. What can you do to help me? So sometimes for him it's just a process that he needs to understand that he's not going to be able to get it all done on his own, and he understands the strengths and weaknesses of his employees, so then he knows who to go to ask for help in certain projects and stuff like that.
I think one of the things that, I don't know if it was in growing the business, is that I had this realization that none of us are great at anything or everything. And I think the higher power made us that way so we would need each other. And oftentimes in work, people will hold people up to standards of perfection rather than to what they're good at. So someone might say, well, I'd be a better customer service manager than that. It's like, well, yeah, maybe you'd be better in discipline than you are on rah-rah, but maybe in that department it needs more rah-rah than discipline. Meaning in the aspect of, and I think kind of guiding people to look at other people that way. You can't look at it that if I was in that role, I would do, you might do certain things better, but there might be also byproducts that might not be as good. And so, and I always looked at it you know, trying to get the right people in the right seats on the truck. And if one of the things I picked up from Good to Great was if someone's working for you and you would hire them again, then you have the right person. If you're frustrated with them, you have them in the wrong seat. And if you wouldn't hire them again, you should part ways, because they're holding up your life, you're holding up their life. And in the aspect is because sometimes really good people just, you don't mesh. You know, it doesn't mean they're bad people, just they don't mesh. And I think to grow, learning to work with people from all sorts of backgrounds, with all sorts of different strengths, because I'm not great. There's a few things I'm good at, and some of them are natural. Like I'm really good at seeing patterns. It's hard to explain. You know, when I was 10, I was the first kid in the area to turn over Pac-Man because it's a pattern. But other people have other strengths, you follow me? And so I always had people around me that are really good. And of course, as a leader, I need to ask for help. Meaning, sometimes as a leader, you look at it, you've got to be like the best at everything. But you can't, you know, you can't be the best. You can't be the best at everything. As a leader, you can be good at a few things. And some people maybe have the capacity, more bandwidth, to be great at 90% of the things they do. But the reality of it is most of us need people around us.
Can you give us a story of some situation or a time in your building your business that you failed, and what did that look like, and how did you come back from that?
I think there's a lot of failures along the way. I'm trying to think of a few that come off the, well, for example, we got going and we were selling truck accessories and we were putting car parts off, and someone said, well, why don't we sell some other stuff? So we kind of got into motor oil, and then the next thing you know, there was dog food on the website. And the next thing you know, where we were like going really, really wide, and where it was like we put a lot of resources into this, and it wasn't like nobody's going to come to. I think it was like we kind of thought like, you know, like to kind of be Cabela-esque, you know, have more than, which by the way, I think, so anyway, that, and so it was like just this train wreck. We had all this stuff on the website that really didn't fit, and we kind of had to backpedal because of course we went to partners and, you know, got them on board. It's like, this isn't going to work, but there's numerous stories of that along the way. One thing I think when it comes to businesses and is going to that aspect of being helpful. Everybody knows Gander Mountain, they went broke, right? Gander Mountain, how they sold was buy. 10% off, buy. And Shields, which is a company in our area, brick and mortar, and then of course you have Cabela's, it's mixture. But both of those companies help people do whatever it is they do better. Shields helps you sport better, hunt better, camp better, and they also sell the stuff to do that. And so does Cabela's. They spend a lot of time trying to help you do whatever you do better. And so it gets back to that be useful in your marketing, and I think people will sometimes reciprocate and buy your product if you're useful to them. And whereas if you lead with buy, which is what Gander Mountain did, their website was that way, their stores were that way, they didn't do so hot because people want more than just buy from you. I think what we're trying to do, being someone new at publishing a book, like a lot of things in life, is the world's set up for the people who've already did that. I'm saying that all bad. But anyway, what would help is if folks who do get my book, Principles of Fortune, is to review it on Amazon for a couple of reasons. When you have more reviews, then Amazon will market it, and I think the book has a really good message of take care of your people. And here, you know, there's hundreds of actions on how you can deliver more to your employees, customers, partners in the book. And I think rather than the ugly side of corporate America, there can be a beautiful side to it too, or just your mom and pop. And I think it's in the book, and it comes from a perspective of an average, ordinary guy. Meaning when you look at some of the business leaders of the world, like whether it's Tony Hsieh at Zappos or some of those folks, you know, they're Ivy Leaguers, they have a lot of resources. Most of them can call and, you know, talk to a governor or a president or whatever in one phone call. Versus most of us, how do you like, that's hard to identify with. I can learn from those people. But anyway, how you can help is if you do get the book, review it up, because it does help get the word out about the book. And thank you for asking.